My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my ranking of the DCEU from worst to best. And this video will have spoilers, so there's your warning. But the DCEU has been a complete mess. Like, we never got a proper Man of Steel 2, we never got a standalone Batman movie, and then we never got the ending of the Snyderverse. And it's just a complete mess, to be honest. There are some gems here, but as a connected universe, it never really took off. So let's begin with my ranking with the worst movie. And this movie I saw once and I never want to watch it again, and it's the 2017 Justice League. This movie is just as generic, as forgettable, as bland as they come. There is nothing in this movie that remotely stands out. You've got Zack Snyder's vision and Josh Whedon's vision combined for just this ugly disaster of a movie. The humor completely falls flat. The villain is just atrocious. And it's just a movie that did not work for me in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, I watched it once and that's enough. I never want to watch it again. I think this is not just the worst DCEU movie, but there's a real argument that could be made for being the worst superhero movie ever made. So that's why it's in last place. In spot number 15, this is a hot take because everyone else seems to love this movie and I hated it, and it's Blue Beetle. Now, I love the character because you've got this normal human who wants to do good in this alien suit that wants to do evil. And it's about this internal struggle, this conflict between the two. And I never got that sense from this movie. And instead, we just got the most generic, forgettable origin story possible. Like, it just feels like Spider-Man and Iron Man all into one, and there's nothing about it that stood out. I also found it really frustrating that he refused to fight back to the extent he should have because he didn't want to kill the people, and they just pushed that way too much. And then at the end of the movie, his family's killing people left, right, and center. So it's like, what's your stance on this? I thought the villains were as bland as they come. The supporting cast doesn't really stand out in any way. I guess George Lopez maybe a little bit, but honestly, I watched this movie back in August and I'll never watch it again. I think it was just a terrible, generic movie. In number 14, we've got Black Adam. And this is what happens when an actor's ego takes over. Because Black Adam is not the hero. He is Shazam's arch nemesis. So the fact they gave him an entire movie where he's the good guy is just a baffling decision. It goes against everything this character is. But nope, Dwayne Johnson has to have it his way, and in return we get the most generic movie possible. Like, there are some darker elements of this story that I should love, but the execution is just lacking in every way. Most of the supporting cast doesn't stand out. Pierce Brosnan is the bright spot in this movie. Dwayne Johnson plays Dwayne Johnson. The villain is as forgettable as they come, and it's just a movie that I watched once and it left zero impression on me whatsoever, and I'll never watch it again. So that's why it's the third worst DCEU movie. In spot number 13 is Suicide Squad, and even though this movie is near the bottom, I don't think it's as bad as people say. I do think there's a vision you can see here. I think Will Smith and Margot Robbie give personality-filled performances, and I like the character arc of El Diablo, and I like some of the ideas it's going for with Enchantress. That hand flip scene is great. But you can just tell the studio destroyed this movie. Like, the first 20 minutes is non-stop character introductions and exposition, each with its own soundtrack, and it's just a complete mess. And then on top of that, I just feel like the entire movie is just kinda bland. You know, like, you can see the pieces, but it just feels like it got destroyed. And Jared Leto's Joker is truly as bad as everyone says it is. It is an abysmal take. I hate it. So, yes, that's why it's number 13. The next movie on this list is Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. And I'll give credit where it's due. I think this movie is well directed by Kathy Lane. She gives this movie lots of style and personality. But I hate this take on Harley Quinn. She's not meant to be this empowering female figure. She's just not. She is the victim of abuse, and that's what makes her so complex and so interesting. And the fact we don't even see her relationship with Joker in the DCEU means her entire character arc in this movie means nothing. Diddly frickin' squat. So it's just a baffling take. I thought Margot Robbie was very annoying as the lead character here. All the supporting characters are as forgettable as they come. Ewan McGregor does the best he can, but his character is written so poorly. Yeah, it's just a bad, annoying movie, so that's why it's in number 12 spot. In number 11, we've got Wonder Woman 1984. And the thing is, I want to love this movie. There is some great ambition here. Like, the entire idea of this wishing stone, and Steve being brought back to life, and Barbara turning into the cheetah, and then Maxwell Lord giving everyone their wishes. Like, this could have been amazing. But the movie just makes one baffling decision after another. It focuses on foreign oil, which is so uninteresting. Instead of having Steve come back to life, he takes over someone else's body, which just makes it very uncomfortable, and I don't know for the life of me why they went in that direction. It's just so obviously messed up. And then we've got Barbara turning powerful, which could have been really good, but then she kind of just turns into Cheetah at the end because now she gets 2 wishes for some reason. And then her big I'm turning evil moment is beating up a rapist. And I'm just like, really? Like, that's dumb. So, like, there's potential, there's some good ideas here, but I just think in the overall execution, it's really disappointing and quite boring. Like, this movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes. No excuse. It's way too long. And then in 10th spot, we've got The Flash, which is very interesting because before this movie came out, everybody was calling it one of the best superhero movies of all time. Every test screening was beyond positive. And then the movie came out and now everybody hates it. And the truth is, I don't like this movie. I think it's bad. But I don't think it's like the worst thing ever. And it's definitely not great. Like, it's just a 4 out of 10 consistently. There were some good moments. I think the scene where he's saving the babies at the beginning is actually very funny. I like the showcase of his abilities and him phasing through the walls. And that scene when he's trying to run fast but he doesn't have his powers is quite funny. I like the idea that Barry loses his powers while the other Barry gets them. And I like some of the ideas it's going for, but there is just one super obvious issue with this movie that just... It's the fact that his entire character arc is based on his relationship with his mom, but his mom is barely in this movie at all. So at the end of this movie, when he's willing to give her up, it has zero weight behind it because we don't know her as a person. And then after he accepts the past and moves on, he immediately changes the past again. And it's like, so there was no real character arc either, which is just such a baffling degree. I also think some of the CGI in this movie is truly hideous. The final battle is as uninteresting and as boring as they get, even though I do like it when he goes back in time over and over again to try to bring Batman back and try to bring Supergirl back, but he keeps failing. And then the other Barry starts turning evil. That's actually a really cool idea. But then, right when the movie gets good, it gets really stupid with all the odd cameos, and then the movie ends. And it's like, I don't know, you had me there for a moment. And Michael Keaton, I don't think is all that good in this movie either. Yeah, it's just it had promise, but in the end, I think the execution was underwhelming to say the least. The next movie on this list is one I do not like, and I know most people have this in like the top 2 spots. But Man of Steel just doesn't work for me as a movie. Now, I love the prologue. I love the musical score in this movie. It is fantastic. But just this exploration of Superman's character just falls flat for me. The fact that he lets his dad die so nobody knows about his powers has never worked for me. It just takes me out of the movie entirely. And then Lois Lane is pretty uninteresting here, and then the action set pieces just go too big for its own good to the point where it has no sense of weight or emotion. And yeah, I just don't think this is a good script. I think Superman's a very bland character in this movie. And it's a movie that whenever I've rewatched it, I want to love it, but I just can't. So that's why it's number 9. And now we go to the next 8 I like. These are the positive movies. And at number 8 is Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I liked this movie. Is it great? No. Is it life-changing? Absolutely not. But I still had enough fun with it. I like how David F. Sandberg brings some of his horror sensibilities with this movie. I like how it captures that feeling of Harry Potter every now and again, especially with that pen that writes by itself. I think Rachel Zegler does a really good job, and I like the tryst with her character in the first act. I think the movie has some pretty decent humor. I think it manages to be entertaining enough. It has some nice emotion at the end of the movie. Are the supporting characters the best? No. Are the villains great? No. Is it too long? Yes. But I still think there's enough to like here to have a good enough time. My 7th favorite DCEU movie is Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I do like this movie. I think it's definitely a step up from the original. But, okay, well, I like the soundtrack. I like the visuals. I like the showcase of people's abilities. Zack Snyder does that perfectly. I think the last act is really great, especially with what the Flash is given to do. But the movie is 4 hours long and there's just no justification for it. It's just too much. Too much. Like, I don't know if I'll ever watch this movie again just because of its length. And then the movie ends on a cliffhanger for a movie we're never going to see. And Jared Leto, in his 5 minutes of screen time here, is truly abysmal. So, I still think it's fine enough, but you can't just make a 4-hour movie and think it's going to be released that way. It could have been condensed and it could have been better, but I still enjoy it for what Zack Snyder brings to it. My sixth favorite DCEU movie is Shazam, and I used to love this movie, and on a rewatch, I still like it, but not as much. I think it's fun. I think Zachary Levi does a really good job. I think it has some nice, heartfelt more elements to it, especially with everything regarding Billy's mom. I like the different monsters that you see in this movie. But just like the sequel, it's too long. The last act goes on for like 40 minutes and there's just no excuse for it. I also feel like they focus too much on Mark Strong's character despite him being a very generic villain. So, yeah, I still enjoyed. There's enough laughs to be had, enough entertainment, but it's not as good as it once was in my mind. Then we get to my fifth favorite DCEU movie, and yes, I'm saying it's number 5. I enjoyed Aquaman in the Lost Kingdom. I think the amount of hate this movie is receiving is a bit over the top. Like, if you don't like it, fine, but really, like, this is the movie you passionately hate? I don't know, I just thought it was harmless fun. It reminded me of a Saturday morning cartoon in the best possible way. I love what James Wan brings to this movie. I think those Octo Warbot designs are incredibly cool. I like how there's an army of the dead. I like how some of the creature designs look like skeletons. I love that one shot of Black Manta in the dark and his eyes light up. That's really cool and badass. I think Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson are both really good in this movie, and their chemistry keeps it entertaining. I like the fact there was a section with giant bugs. It reminded me of King Kong, and that's a good thing. And I like how goofy this movie is. Everyone keeps criticizing the dialogue, but that was the movie's charm for me, was just how over the top and how cheesy it was willing to be. I love it when he throws the trident at the end and it smashes the other trident. Like, I just thought that was really great. So, like, I don't know, I definitely had enough fun with this movie. Is it going to change your life? No. Is it flawed? Definitely. The script's a bit messy. The handling of the side characters is very questionable. I understand everything that happened with Amber Heard, but Mira does play a big role in this story, and she's barely in it. And I think Black Manta's plot is a bit messy. Like, it starts off as a revenge quest, but then he gets possessed, and now it's about bringing this guy back. It's not as streamlined as it could have been, but I still think this movie is nowhere near as bad as people say it is. I consistently enjoyed it. Never loved it, but enjoyed it. So that's why it's number 5. My fourth favorite DCEU movie is Wonder Woman. And I feel like we all kind of agree about this movie, that there's no real hot takes with it. I think the world building is very strong. There is some great action here, especially No Man Land. The humor really works for me. And Gal Gadot and Chris Pine have great chemistry, and it can be quite funny. So, like, we all really like the first 2 acts, and despite Steve's sacrifice having emotion in the last act, the movie just takes a massive drop in quality, with bad CGI, questionable decisions, and a really weak final villain, and it taints the rest of the movie. It would have been great if Wonder Woman is learning about how there isn't a scapegoat. Mankind is just sometimes evil. But then the movie just puts all of that onto Iris, and now it just makes it a bit messy. So, yeah, I still enjoyed this movie. I just don't like some decisions made. Now, the next 2 movies I went back and forth with what would be number 2 and number 3. And I ended up settling on Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice being my third favorite DCEU movie. Now, I haven't actually seen the Ultimate Cut, but I do like the theatrical version. I think Ben Affleck does a great job as Batman. I love how brutal this character is. I love Jeremy Irons as Alfred. I think Superman is a very compelling character, and I like how his ideologies go head to head with Batman's. I thought it was a really compelling character movie for the first two acts. I love Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. I think he's great in this movie. I think it has some really great action. I think it has some really strong visuals. But the last act, I do not like Doomsday. I think that entire fight is way too much. I think some of the CGI with him is really bad. I think the build up to the Justice League movie is cringy, especially when Flash travels from the future. And Superman's death does have some emotion to it, but at the same time, you're like, this is only the second movie of this universe. It just felt baffling at the time. So, I do love so much of the writing here. Like, the first two acts, I legitimately love, and I love Lex Luthor's theme, but it definitely does drop the ball a bit in the finale. So that's why it's my third favorite DCEU movie. My second favorite DCEU movie is Aquaman. James Wan is one of my favorite directors, and I think he just does a great job here. He leans into the goofiness as much as possible, and you just get a really memorable movie. Like, some of the dialogue is so cheesy and so over the top, but that's what I love about it. I love how you've got an octopus playing the drums. Despite the visual effects being hit or miss, I still think it's a very pretty movie to look at. I think Jason Momoa, Willem Dafoe, Patrick Wilson, Nicole Kidman, the other four actors do a really good job. I thought the story with Aquaman's mom and dad is actually very heartfelt. I think the action in this movie is spectacular, incredibly well shot, and really exciting. I love how crazy it goes in the last act. Like, it feels like a big budget space movie, but underwater, and I love that fact. And yeah, no, I just think there's so much enjoyment to be had. It does maybe feel a bit too long every now and again. Not everything about it works, but I think it is a total blast. I kind of like it more and more whenever I think about it. And the trench scene is fantastic. That shot of them diving in while there was like thousands of creatures is just perfection. So that's why it's my second favorite DCEU movie. But my favorite DCEU movie is The Suicide Squad. Now, I don't think this movie is perfect. I do got a few issues, but I also think it is just amazing in some moments. I think you've got yourself a really strong cast. Joe Kinnaman is a huge improvement here than he was in the original Suicide Squad. I love John Cena here, his best performance. Idris Elba is great. The girl who plays Ratcatcher is great. I love the father-daughter relationship between her and Idris Elba. I think the characters have plenty of depth to them. I think this movie can be really funny. I love the stylistic decisions made here, especially the non-linear approach to its climax. And I love the horror elements. Sterile is brought to life so perfectly, and there is some truly disturbing moments here. And man, just everything about this last act works for me. With Rick Flag and Peacemaker fighting each other. Peacemaker, what a joke. Like, that line hits so hard. You really got me to kill for that character. And then the decision to save the city has lots of weight behind it. And then when Ratcatcher saves the day and all the rats come and the music picks up, it is just a work of art. It is beautiful. It is so heartfelt. And it just moves me to tears every single time. And then we get that flashback to Ratcatcher talking to her dad. And he goes like, rats are the most despised creature of them all. If there's purpose for them, then there's hope for us all. And the music just, it's incredible. That is the peak of the DCEU. And on top of that, you've also got yourself some great action in this movie, especially Harley Quinn's escape. I love lots of the soundtrack choices, especially Rain by Grandson and the K-Flay song in the bar. And yeah, I just think it's immensely entertaining. It has great characters, it has emotion, great action. I love how brutal it is. I love the horror elements. It might be messy every now and again, but the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. So that's why it's my favorite DCEU movie. Incredibly well directed by James Gunn, and I've got my doubts about the future of the DC universe, but I really hope he can deliver. But that's my ranking. What's yours? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos soon. And Gavin, out.